Yo, what up? Early Saturday afternoon, probably too early for most, but we don't care because if you want to learn, then you have to wake up early. And let me just make this slightly bigger. Session review. I had one student who struggled to make profits. You're a bit desperate. Is he doing something wrong or is he just super unlucky? And I'm quite sure that most of us can relate to those feelings. Sometimes you wonder if I'm good enough or if I'm just the unluckiest person in the world. Nothing seems to work. So let's do a session review. And his hands are here. He had around almost 150 hands in the session, so not a super long session. And I filtered hands where VPIP is true or he sees the flop, which means on the big blind he hits a wall or he's posted blind some other way and sees the flop for free. And it's around 30 hands. So one session, 30 hands. Let's see what we can find. Do we find some tendencies or errors? Probably going to take 1 hour or so. So let's get started. And hands are played on Bodog. Opponents are strings of numbers and letters, but the HUD should be working what the HUD was when he was playing real time. And if we get interesting spots, let's open the hands on Poker Choose and explore a bit more. So first hand, there's a min. Oh, it's PLO5. Yeah, had to check. It's a min open from the button. Early session, no reach on the opponent. I wouldn't start to make a 3-bet with this kind of hand. Maybe double suited, yeah, but especially early the session when opponent is unknown, we have no idea what he's doing. He's shorty, min opening button. Seems to be a pretty weak player. No reason to push really thin pre-flop with this hand because it's not a monster. So see the flop, middle pair, bets half a pot. The thing is that middle pair and cut shot is quite thin. You have backdoor flush draw, but the problem is that even if a 10 comes, you're not super happy to stack off. Hearts comes, you're able to call the turn, but there's one player behind you and he's shorty too. I would just keep it. In the best case scenario, you have enough equity, but the playability is a bit bad in case there's a lot of action on the turn. So what happens here, you often call and then you're lost on the turn. If anyone bets the turn, you often have to fold. If they don't, you go to river. You rarely have a super strong hand. So that's a nice fold. Then pot kings, same opponent, another min open. Now this is a 3-bet. Even with worse kings, but he's 40 BP deep. And seems to me that, well, based on 1.5 hands, he's not super strong player. I mean, min open doesn't indicate that he's great PLO mastermind, playing 40 BP short, and all the other players are short. Versus these players, just put here. You could raise to 35. He calls, he has 180, pot is 70 cents. You can SPR 2.5. You should be able to play SPR 2.5 even with not so strong kings. Calling is definitely fine. Problem is that you have to hit the set to play really big or overbrand flush draw. Like on this board, you could then see bet pot is 70. You could see bet 30 cents, and he's going to fold quite a lot of hands. Vince PLO is following. Whoa, what a surprise! Thank you. We are approaching 400. The meter is missing few. I have no idea what the actual follower count is, but it's way closer to 40 than what's shown there. But thank you. Nice to see you waking up so early. Or I don't know if it's early or late, but here in Europe, it's very early for poker players. Now when there's two aces on the flop, there's not much you can do, but he checks behind. He doesn't have an ace. 99% of times. Could go for value here. Protection value. I would like to see a 20-cent bet. And he does the 8-cent bet. And that's something I've been talking about often. The difference between aggressive and passive line is the biggest difference is that when you take passive line, you often have to hit something to win pots. If you take aggressive line, you don't have to. Now we don't know if this is a stab with ace 10 or does he have just queen jack of diamonds? Does he have a 10 and he overvalues it a little? No idea. And now it's really hard to fold, but on the other hand, it's really hard to call. So I wouldn't want to be on this spot. When this guy checks, he definitely has ace in his range, but when our friend here, the cutoff, when he checks, I wouldn't give him credit of having an ace. And when the 10 comes, it doesn't really change much. It opens some draws. That's why I would like to protect. And this is the only player that we're worried here. And he's not going to have ace often. If we bet 20 cents, then we're risking 20 to win 50. We have to be right 40% of times. So if he folds half of his hands, we start to make a profit. And if someone is thinking, okay, if we bet, we just isolate ourselves against stronger hands, which is true. If they call, they probably have better hand or at least shitloads of equity. But if we check, they still have the same hands in their range and they get a free shot to all the possible draws. So we protect our hand by making them pay if they want to see the river with jack 9 or diamond draw. And hero folds here. I think it's a missed opportunity. Especially with this weak sizing, this looks like it could be almost anything. Weird sizings. But two hands and two opponents who have weird preflop or postflop sizings, that should be a good sign. I mean, if you struggle to make money at smaller stakes, and you think you're a competent player without huge leads, then the reason probably is that your edge versus the opponent is not good enough. And talking about having edge and how the rate affects, there was a great session earlier this week at Poker Strategy. I think you're going to find it on pokerstrategy.com. You have to write the .com afterwards. Pokerstrategy.com channel, I think it should be there as a video, or then it comes to their side. But there was 1.5 hours session just about rate, how it affects us, and really in-depth explanation what the edge is and what does that mean, because it's pretty tied to making money, which is tied to rate. So your edge should be really high versus these players, which means that the games are profitable. All you have to do is know how to adjust to those players. So let's see what kind of players we have, and then we can discuss how to adjust versus them. Pocket aces, min open, definitely put here. He calls, and now we get. Oh, he's lost money at some point. He's all in. Well, didn't see that one. Can we move these boxes? Because now these are in my way. So, oh, he has only 35 cents. Who won? Not sure who has won on the table. Probably this guy. So all the hands are not here. I skipped hands where hero just folds pre-flop without putting any money. So we get it in. And he has total crap. Nice. Would be nice if he was deeper, but you can't get what you want. Here's nice double-suited hand. Three-way pot happens often. Should we bet on the flop or not? That's the. It's not $1,000,000 question, but at least 29-cent question. I would bet make my life easier. And it's just if the numbers are there. If we give opponent preflop range and we give them a calling range, and we see by the numbers that okay they are folding enough, then the only way they could change the situation is if they do something else. And as we have the top pair, it doesn't matter if they call wider, because we have made hand value. The only way they can prevent us from making money is to start raising us as a bluff, which they are not. 67-7, 67-0. They don't raise with bluffs. So they are never going to outplay you. And you don't have to bet big. Just make them fold all the air. Don't give free shots to random overcard of king or queen, random pocket pairs, pocket fives, and two outer. Don't do that. Bet small. You don't have to bet big here. And if they call with draws, the good thing is that you have the pair. You have two backdoor flush draws, which block some of their outs and run outs. And you have 7-8 with blocks all the possible 9-8, queen nines. So I would definitely bet here small. You can bet 25 cents if you don't want to bet bigger. It doesn't matter if it's 25 or 29 versus these players. And if you bet half a pot, you have to be making them fall at least 30% of time for it to be immediately profitable. And you have the top pair with backdoors. Versus their calling range, you probably have very high equity. And Monday is saying that you're going to check everything. Yeah, if you play balanced strategy. So which gets us to the next point. We're playing PLO5 versus super calling stations. We don't want to play solver strategy versus these players. You can play, but if we want to exploit opponents, then where's my poker choose? And let's try to find the hand. Okay, we have to copy the different format. Right. So they both have pretty much the same range. I'm going to get the optional line. So both of them have a jack or better, which means jack over pair, then full house, slightly less than 50% of times. So the both of them fold, it's around 25% of times, unless they start to call with 8-9 plus, which they will have around 16% of times. But versus their draws, you have the best equity anyway. So you are not going to get two folds probably often enough, but your average equity versus the coin range is high. And one of the reasons why I would like to bet the flop is that then you have more options for the turn. If you check the flop, it's probably totally fine. They are not going to outplay you for sure, as stated in the beginning. No one is going to outplay you on what the fuck? Where's the hand? No one is going to outplay you, but especially if you're struggling and what to do, then in my mind, it's way better if you can make easy decisions And then we have two options here. We can either bet or we can check. And when you play versus these 67 zeros, then they are never going to bluff you. They're never going to outplay you. They will never exploit if you value bet wider. And the way to make money versus them is to start making a lot more thinner value bets than normal. You want to extract as much as money as you can. And here, let's say that, where did I put my poker twos? Let's give them range of queen, queen plus, which is better made hands. And they have better made hand 1 out of 3 times. And even versus those, you have 20% equity. If you bet the flop, you make your life a lot easier. And when you're struggling, if you can beat the stakes or not, and your confidence is very low, and you're not sure what to do, then try to make things as simple as possible. Because the more you have to guess, the more uncertainty it creates. And betting here really small is 25 cents is going to be profitable. I'm going to talk about Typhoon Challenge probably. I haven't had a chance to watch that. Have been working too much. So if you bet here, you make your life easier. You have phone equity versus the calling range. You have showdown equity, and then you probably get the showdown a bit more easier than if you check the flop. Then you almost have to call a lot of turns depending on the sizing. And yes, I understand, Monty, that you check here most hands. I would say that if either one of them is a decent player, let's say we would have this P275, whatever, 4432. If either one of them is this player, I would certainly check. No doubt about that. Or if there are unknowns, I would certainly check. So I get that. But if we want to exploit these calling stations, I think it's very fine to bet 25 cents here. So it's just exploiting the opponents instead of giving them a free card, because we are not worried that if we bet here too much. Yeah, I have tiny sample. Oh, that's another thing. We have 15 hands on, I don't know, I should give names. You should be able to give names. So this could be Bobby and this could be Jack. We have small sample size, but he is 67.7 out of 15 hands. Should we pay attention? We do. It's a sample size, it's small, so we have to think about how valuable that information is. Even 15 hands is better than 0. Even 1 hand is better than 0. If we see someone limp calling pre-flop, we can make estimations out of that. If someone limp calls from UTG, it's 1 hand sample size, but you can tell that he is not a competent rep, most likely, especially if you see what hand he has. Here, this guy has played 10 out of 15 hands and raised only 1 of those. So he has played passive pre-flop, and the sample size is not huge, but he's the one who was shorty probably. I don't remember if this is the same table because the numbers are so weird, but probably because we have hands on him. We know that he's not a good player. So the chance of him being a good aggressive player who just happened to have 10 out of 15 hands a spot where he takes passive line pre-flop is less likely than the chance that he is 67.7 calling station. So what I'm saying that people often say that if you don't have 100 hands, you can't make any assumptions on the opponent. That's total crap. You can make assumptions out of 1 hand. You make those when hand goes to showdown and you see that, okay, opponent bluff with the hand, which shouldn't be a bluffing hand in solver strategy. So you know that compared to solver strategy, the opponent is probably bluffing too much. and you start to make adjustments based on one hand. It's not different in the odd. If you see opponent code 4 betting 2 hands in a row with total chunk 5 5 2 3 rainbow, you can make assumptions that okay, he might be an maniac. There's a higher chance he's maniac than he's super neat. So you can start to make adjustments based on the value of the information. We always play with probabilities. I mean, the whole poker is about probabilities and giving weight to probabilities. We never know sure what opponent has, but we define his range and play with those probabilities and make a decision based on the probabilities, the decision which is best most of the times. But we don't know for sure. It doesn't change with HUD. 15-hand sample size gives us that there's higher probability that he is a passive coin station than aggressive player. And then we adjust and make decisions that are best most of the times versus those assumptions and estimations. If we have more information, we change. It's about how much you weight it. And I have to send this message just a second. I forgot to tell my wifey that I'm doing a session on the downstairs. Yeah. Life note: if you leave the house, you should tell everyone where you went. It's about the weight of information. Let's say here we have 18 hands and the opponent is 44-33. 44-33, 20. And well, 20 is not, it's just 2 out of 10 hands. This is kind of stats on the heart that we can make a lot of estimations. He could be a good balanced player, decent rep, who just happens to have good hands. Or he could be more aggressive, who have had bad hands. Now the chance for him being something between aggressive, good rep is way more likely. So now we shouldn't make a lot of assumptions. But the more extreme the stats are, the higher chance there is that the stats are actually correlated to the player style. I mean, if you don't have HUD, let's say you play and run it once. All the information you have is what the opponent does, and if the hand goes to showdown, you can see how he played that hand. So you make a note. You see him playing certain hand, certain way, certain spot, you make a note. So basically, you're using one hand sample size for your information. And often later in the same kind of spot, you adjust your strategy based on what you saw earlier. So there you use one hand sample size. So I would say that whatever the sample size is, if it's one hand or more, you can use it. It's just don't overreact to the stats. Like this here, 15 hands, 67, I would use the information. I would start adjusting, assuming he's a passive coin station. Here, pretty much same sample size, 18 hands, 44, 33, 20. I wouldn't start to make any adjustments before I get bigger sample size. But yeah, you can definitely check here. I would just make my life easier, exploit the opponent by betting small. He pots, now you definitely fold. That's a 10 plus. Or at least better hand. But from passive calling stations, the thing is that you get most value on the flop. Second most value you get on the turn. If I talk about frequencies. And the most value, least value on frequencies you get on the river, because on the river they don't pay with draws. On the flop they can call with cut shot. On the turn, probably not. On the river, they never call you with the cut shot. Then, if we bet the flop and we want to value bet the turn, now we can get a lot of bigger sizing in. And if we want to value bet the river, we can get even bigger. That's why I don't like to protect my checking range versus passive coin stations who doesn't give a damn about your hand. They only look at their own hand and probably call very wide. I would like to start extracting value on the flop as often as possible. Then if the runout is bad, check turn, check river, go to showdown, make money. Instead of giving free cards, and then if I happen to make the better hand, if I only bet turn and river, I can less value than by betting flop turn and river. But I definitely get that the first reaction would be to check the flop, and my reaction would be to check the flop unless both opponents are passive coin stations. If either one of them is anything else, it becomes very easy check. Yep, I'm out of position, three-way flop, and I'm exploiting opponents with 15 and then hand sample size. You are correct. I am. And I think it's fine. I tried to explain as best as I can why it's fine versus those preflop samples. Now we lost the HUD. What the fuck? Who killed our HUD? Well, then we play HUDless poker. And then we lost the table. Damn. Double paired hands. If small blind folds, you could even 3-bet. Or if the pocket nines would be higher. But keeping 9-9 here, and as our opponents are quite passive in general, calling is definitely fine. And then you miss the flop. And turn doesn't really change anything. So in a way, turn is a blank. And here we don't have the hard, but we have guy who has 110 buying stack, 1000 BB stack. I would fold. The thing is that on the best case scenario, you have equity. And on the worst case scenario, you are drawing 20%. You need 29. So in a way, you could call. Then you just probably have to bluff catch all the pair in reverse most of the times. But even if you hit the flush, you need implied odds. You don't need much, but I don't think you have them, and there's a chance that you're dominated. It's a pretty thin situation, and we have the player behind, which sucks. So I wouldn't look for the very marginal spots, especially if you're losing, you have a bad confidence, then you should be able to make money without squeezing in for all the very, very marginal spots with high variance. PLO matrix, I've used it, and I'm sure solver would squeeze king 9-9. Probably. Let's check. We can check it. It's on. Oh yeah. Oh fuck. There's limper. Solver doesn't understand limpers. But let's assume we don't have an limper. So we have on the big blind king 9-9. And it's four-handed, which means we should probably squeeze a bit more. But yeah, it's a squeeze versus almost anyone. But then we come to the macros. Do we need to push preflop equities that hard? I mean, Solver assumes there's fold equity. Here we definitely don't have. One guy shorty, which is probably good for us. You could squeeze, but I would say that it's very likely very profitable at these games if you just call and see if you hit the set. Well, it does matter because the EV that solver calculates for the squeeze to have includes some preflop fold equity. But it's fine to 3-bet it. But I think it's very fun to call. It's very plus EV even to call. And now we can hard only two hands for this player, so hero just can't see it. Overpair with the flush draw, and everyone checks. This is kind of spot where if all the opponents are very passive, you could start value betting the flop versus those passive coin stations. But we have a guy with then bind stack, and probably you don't get 1000 BB stack by being just super passive nit, or at least even a super passive player. You need to gamble a lot to get that kind of stack, most likely. So we have no idea what kind of player he is. We have no idea, or we have 1 and 2 hand sample size, but these stats doesn't mean anything. I would check, use the position, see the turn. You strongly advise me to follow Montgomery in preflop. Oh, I do, and actually, if we talk about such opening ranges, they are same. Oh, there's a video about preflop on YouTube. But the thing is that very often people, well, I don't say, Monty, that you are a solver believer. It's just a term I use for people who think that solver is the absolute truth that we should follow always. And I disagree. Solver is a strategy created to play against a strategy. Poker is always a game of two strategies colliding. And solver strategy is the optimal way to play against another solver strategy. Then as soon as the opponents deviate from solver strategy, the solver strategy itself is no longer optimal. So you have to understand that. When we come to the Bodog PLO5, the solver strategy is not optimal. So to follow all the solver strategy pre-flops, raise first ins are fine. They are probably useful anywhere. But when we go to the squeezing ranges, calling 3-bets, 4-betting, and so on, the solver strategy is not optimal. So then we have to think, do we change anything? And king 9-9, definitely squeezing is profitable. As I said, I get it. But the way opponents are playing, it's also very profitable if you just call preflop. You still have really high EV for the hand. And you probably have higher EV by calling than you would have on PLO50 Poker Stars by calling. Solver strategy will win 100% of times. Are you sure? Because I disagree. I haven't seen any evidence that solver strategy would make money on PLO5. I've seen solver strategy used on micros, and it was, well, it was a bot that was using it, and it wasn't perfect. But preflop was there solver, postflop was close to solver, and it was break even. So the solver strategy cannot be optimal for micros. And I'm definitely thinking that I'm not convinced that solver strategy will beat the rake and micros, because solver strategy has huge problems versus the extremes of player. It always, as a solver strategy, always assumes that opponent is playing balanced solver strategy. So when the opponent is aggressive, solver is overfolding. When opponent is very tight and doesn't bluff rivers, solver is still going to bluff catch the rivers. So solver cannot be the optimal strategy for macros. And I'm not sure if solver is actually even profitable if you play core solver strategy at PLO5 versus those players. Because solver is not value betting thin enough that you can value bet versus work bet. So it's missing value in so many spots instead of gaining value. But I've never seen anyone play solver strategy in small steps. And I doubt I will never see, because no human can play solver strategy. If we could have a bot with solver strategy, it would be interesting to see. Solver strategy is a good starting point, but you have to understand that the idea of solver strategy is to be balanced so opponents cannot exploit you. When we go to PLO5, I say fuck that. No one is exploiting you. Or at least 99.9% of players are not exploiting you at PLO5. You don't have to have balance almost, at least in most of your ranges. You can just exploit the shit out of opponents. Here, problem is that if you bet and someone raises, you have to get it in. Or then this weirdness starts to happen, and this is kind of spot that I wouldn't want to be. And now there's following from CS Daddy and 3 to fold. Thank you. Missed those when I was ranting about solver. This is a spot I don't want to be. Of course, you call now, but the hand is. Actually, I would shove. He's shorty. And we are ahead of him, most likely, so just get it in here. And now we are a bit pushing. And, well, he had complete crap, and he had a set. So you win the sideboard versus this player. And probably could make notes out of this player that, oh boy. Or queen then deuce deuce, oh boy. Good customers. Another table. Opening queens, paired boards, and opponent needs for half a pot. This is another spot that I have talked about hours. If the opponent checks, should we bet or not? And solver says check, I say bet, and I've backed that up with numbers as in a poker choose so often that we're not going to even discuss about that. But when opponent donks for half a pot, samples are small, but seems to be active player. Problem here is playability. If you call, there's only 2 turns that you're happy to call. So very often if you call here, he bets the turn, you have to fold. And he probably should have something. I would fold here and then pay attention. If he's the player who donks these locked boards and low boards very often, we will see that in the HUD very soon. And then we can start to adjust. So I would just fold here, make your life easier. Now 5 comes, and problem is that if he bets, yeah, there it is, pot size bet. What do? We have the 4 nuts. And we are not afraid of quads 100 pp deep. That's your rule of thumb. So we pretty much have the third nuts. Didn't trip at pre-flop. So effectively, we think that we have the second best hand, at least. Second nuts very often. Aggressive opponent. That's why I don't like to call the flop, because this happens way too often. And then you have to fold and you just waste the 3.5 BBs. You can limp or you could raise. The 7 is a dagger, but 3 broadways with not flush draw versus these passives. If you hit anything, it would be nice if the pot is bigger and the hand is strong enough, in my opinion, versus passive players, PLO5 to raise. But if you want the pot control, don't want to take it a bit more conservatively, completing is definitely fine. And then just give up. Don't chase flush in multi-way pots on paired boards. Here I would raise queen then 9-7, double suited, strong hand. If a jack 8 comes, you have a monster. Well, here we go, 4-way top pair. Wow, that's a tight fold. We have this player who just went broke with 9 high flush draw, who has 1000 BB stack, and he's betting slightly less than half a pot. You have top pair, 2 backdoor, flush draws and even backdoor straight draws. I would definitely see the turn here. Of course, 4 would not be great. He checks. You would see the river. You would have a queen. And that would be better than his hand. Of course, he would win it, but versus we don't know what he has. But you can see that he is betting. At least now you should make a note that stacks off easily. Bets flop with try middle pair. And we have position on him, so awesome. Would raise queens. And now, once again, oh, I love these situations because solver checks 100% of the times. A lot of players checks. What should we do? And let me see, we had the pocket queens. Let's put the hand here. And let's see some numbers. Because have to send a message. So, we have two options, pretty much. Either bet or check. And if we can calculate that almost always or almost guaranteed, either one line is plus EV, then to deviate and do the other line, we should believe it's even higher plus EV. So as we don't have to care about protecting our checking range or have balance on our betting range, which changes the game completely. But if we don't have to care about balance at all, the question is betting plus EV, is checking plus EV, and which one we estimate to be higher EV. It's pretty much like playing casino games. You make the most or the play with highest EV if you have two different ones. So the question is how often they have ace or better. And the thing is that the number probably is higher than most of you think. Because if the board was king, queen, 5, they would have king plus way less than they have ace plus now. Because people like to play ace high hands more than king high hands. That's the thing. So both of them have ace, ace plus. 30% of times, so 1 out of 3 times they have ace or better. And we should probably put king, king plus because they might PL with the king. So now it's 37%, almost 40% of times. So we have around 60% fold equity versus either one of them, which means that overall they are going to both of them, or let's put it this way, on average, neither one of them have pocket kings or better, probably around 30% of times, 35% of times, which means that we can bet half a pot and it's going to be marginally plus EV. That is backed with the numbers. The question is, could either one of them raise us as a bluff? I would say that 3 ways, they are not. 3 ways, neither one is going to raise us with the bluff. You don't see that on PLO5, period. So, if we say that betting here is plus EV, at least for a couple of BPs, then to do something else, we need to believe that it's even more plus EV. And I cannot see a situation where checking would become highly plus EV. Both of them are quite active, which means that once we start to check, and if flop goes check and then we check the turn, either one could stab, and then we are bluff catching, and then we have to play the river with very weak looking hand. So instead of trying to start to make call downs without knowing whether it's plus EV or not, I would like to bet here, and you don't have to bet big. You can bet 1/3 normally as a sin raised pots we could bet half a pot, but here, when it's rainbow and there's no overcards, overpairs possibility, you could bet like 25 cents. And they are going to fold often enough for 25-cent bet to be profitable. So we are effectively turning pocket queens into a bluff. And then you have to fold. And he had nuts on the flop and slow played it. And then he had nuts on the turn. And did he check the river? Yeah. Oh boy. Probably should make a note that slow plays nuts on the flop, slow plays nuts on the river. See the flop. Nothing but a clutch and weak flush draw. Yeah. I wouldn't call this is the guy who bet with really weak hand. The problem is that you have 0 not outs. So, but he's using a lot of small sizings. This is the 1000 BP guy. Then we get the aces, multi-way pot. Overburning the not flush draw. At PLO5, I would just start betting, and if someone raises, I would just get it in. Versus two pairs, oh, you have the gotcha too, though. So versus two pairs, you are ahead. Versus set, you have over 40% equity. So just start betting. And I think pot size is fine versus these high VPIP PLO5 players. Then is king. So now you are either way ahead or way behind. I would check here and see what the opponent does. And the opponent pots that is representing king. And if he doesn't have a king, then you have to think what hands could he bluff here with the pot size. And you're blocking the nut flush draw. If he has a king high flush draw, he has trips with the flush draw, which definitely goes for potting. Thank you, Pro Legolas 1990 for following. Appreciated. So I don't think he pots here with the queen high flush without anything. And if he had like 5, 6, 7 with flush, why wouldn't he raise the flop? Who knows? This looks so much like a king, and it's very hard to find him. A lot of bluffing hands that would pot here, then I would just fold. Nice. That's a fold. Opening kings, two pairs. These are nasty spots versus active players. High SPR situation, flopping naked bottom two. Board is very dynamic, lots of draws. Don't start to bet. Your hand is not improving. If you bet the flop, then you have to check the turn, and then you're really capped on the river. I would much rather check the flop, and then if he bets the turn, which I think he's probably doing off enough, then you just consider should you bluff catch with overpair and bottom two pairs. But bottom here is, if he raises, you have to fold. And if he calls, a lot of his draws are ahead of you anyway. So this is too weak. I would say that to stack off with two pairs on draw heavy board, you need additional equity. If you have 4-8 with kings, with the king high flush draw, which is not possible here on this board, but if you had like bottom two pairs with king high flush draw, or bottom two pairs with overpair and flush draw, or bottom two pairs with jack nine, it would change things. But with naked bottom two, don't stack off here. He folds, which is good for you, but you shouldn't have a lot of fold equity on that board. It's really hard to miss that board completely. Now we start to get hands from this 1000 BB guy. He's 120 then. Plays every hand. Has been lucky. I wouldn't squeeze. Well, it's not a squeeze because we have a limper. I wouldn't 3-bet because it's not opposite, because the limper is probably calling anyway. You can just call and use the position. Hitting top pair. You are blocking kings and queens, but it's four-way, so the chance of someone having is exponentially higher. So just check. Hope to make two pairs on the turn. Definitely call this. You get the odds with the cut. I was just about to say that you get the odds with cut shot. You have 4 outs to nuts, which is going to hit 1 out of 10 times. So to pay 5 cents, you need to make profit, or you need to win 50 cents if a 10 comes. And after you call, the pot is already 72 cents. So you don't need any implied odds. Oh, this is huge mathematical mistake. Missed a lot of value here. Any one of them raising is very unlikely. So, oh boy. I hope the 10 doesn't come because I'm going to cry. No, it didn't. Saved by the bell, but that's just easy mathematical call on the turn. Raises. Yeah, you have to be results oriented. 10 didn't come, so it was good timing to make a mistake. Yeah, in poker, the thing is that sometimes we make a mistake and it actually saves us money. It's more profitable to make the mistake. Or we fold and then we fold 2 outer and then we would make the nuts on the river and we think, oh, why didn't I call? Don't ever start to think like that. Sometimes in poker you make the wrong decision, but you get the best outcome, and vice versa. But the thing is that if you keep making mistakes in the long run, you're not going to make money. Cut shot with backdoor flush draw. Don't bet. The flop is horrible. This is just folding. The flop is so horrible. Remember that even the best hand, ace, ace, king, king, double suited, is a drawing hand in PLO. You're always drawing for favorable flop. Free flop. Not flush draw, nice. But now it's a fold. It's a simple implied mathematics to call here with naked flush draw. Even if you hit the flush on the turn, you need to get 40 cents, which is 2/3 of the pot as value, which is very unlikely because when you call, your hand looks like a flush draw. You're not going to get implied often enough. If he had called, then you can definitely call because he's going to give you value, and then you have to pay 20 cents into pot of 80 cents. So you need only 20 cents as implied odds, 1/4 of the pot. And if he calls, you just cut the odds. But when he folds and we don't know if he's going to call or not, definitely fold. Not sure if I like this because you're blocking all of the hearts. So mostly you're calling with ace, king, queen, 8. I would just skip these kind of situations. It's not a great multi-way pot hand because the only component that's going to give you often enough equity in the multi-way pot hand is the flush draw, which you're blocking very heavily. So these are nasty spots four-way. And betting half a pot. I would just bet bigger. If you want to bet, you can even put it. It's a limp spot. You have top pair, top kicker. And the idea here is when you bet, you make your life easy. If you end the hand here, you should be happy. And you protect your hand versus all kinds of cut shots and pocket sevens that have 2 outers or anything. If you don't bet the flop, then there has to be ace, king, queen for you to bet. So I would bet here. I would just bet bigger, force them to fold. Because you don't want anyone to call. That's the thing. So maximize the fold equity. Now this is way too thin. This is way too thin. I mean, if he hasn't looked his hand, he has 40% equity versus you. So he can make a plus EV call even if he hasn't looked his whole cards yet. And there it is. Well, he didn't. Well, on the turn he had great equity for you, and he makes it on the river. I don't know if he had folded that hand to a pot size flop C bet, but that's what you're trying to achieve. Moonlight Master is asking that, do you have an idea why the running one's PLO pool starts picking up whereas in a later time in the day than the no limit one? I would say that probably the PLO pool has less players than the no limit one. They are just multi-tabling. And I don't know, people like to play at evenings. And I think there's often people checking the lobby and daytime and saying that, okay, no games are running on PLO and they don't want to sit in the tables. So I don't know why, but I would assume that the reason is that there's fewer players living in the PLO pool on running once, so the chance of anyone waking up early and playing early is less likely. Free flop for jacks, miss the flop, don't do anything weird, just give up. And Kula is following. Oh boy, we're picking up followers. We will hit the 400 mark, and then the jackpot is increased. Let me see. Do I have the jackpot comment? Oh, now something super weird starts to happen. Oh, there it is. So normally when we are playing live, we have the jackpot rolling, and you can win actually free money. Yeah, PLO is running on evenings most of the times. Pocket Kings, and often I hear from people who are playing that they open Kings and then everyone calls and they think it's a bad thing. No, it's not this. Pocket Kings is a multi-waypot hand. It has only one component, but if you hit that set of kings, it's super strong, super valuable. So when you can multi-waypot, it's not a problem. This is good for us if we hit the king. If we don't, we don't have to worry what to do with pocket kings. It's very easy to play in multi-way pots. In a heads-up pot, this hand is a bit harder to play because the value of pocket kings is higher even on this board. And Snapper John follows. Whoa, it's raining followings. And Snapper John is enjoying the stream, which is nice. And yeah, PLO is interesting. It's a bit different beast than Hold'em. Now this is just a fold. And we have this 1000 BB guy. Oh. And free flop, definitely take it. And this is a mandatory bet. I'm going to call Amnesty International if you don't bet here. Oh boy, that's so missed. Reason for betting is that when he checks, the chance of him having a jack or better is lower. But let's assume he checks his whole damn range. Let me find the hand. We have that queen high garbage. And then we put it up here. So opponent imps. Well, we could say that probably, well, not 100%. Let's say that he has 75% of hands. And did we have any kind of heart for him at all? No. But we could say that he would open at least very tight for 12% of range. And hero doesn't have any equity. So you don't need to look at these cards. You can throw the cards away and play without cards. But the thing is, if hero bets, does the opponent call often enough? So it's going to be a bluff for sure. I mean, where's my flop for dummies? There it is. Flop for dummies. This was a joke, but turned out to have actually some value. Do you hit the flop? No. Do you have fold equity? Yes. Bet. PLO made easy. Or poker made easy. So the question is, how often he has, let's say, king plus? Because that's what he would call. King, aces, pocket jacks, one jack is enough. 40% of times. All right? Let's give him queen then for the straight draw that he might call. So now, 45% of times. If you bet 10 cents and he folds 45% of times, you make money. Because to be break even, betting pot requires 50% fold equity. So if you bet anything less than a pot, it's going to be plus EV, because I don't think he's going to call with pocket nines kind of hand here. He is not the coin station from the previous tables. So I'm not sure if you can bet 7 cents, but at least bet 5 cents. God damn it. If he's folding at least 35% of his hands, or 33 is the break even, then it's profitable. So if you bet 5 cents, for it not to be profitable, we need to give him hands or coin range that goes over 65%. So if we give him pocket nines or better in his range, he's still folding 47% of times. So let's make it pocket sevens or better. 57. Okay, well, fuck it. Let's give him any pocket pair. 65. Okay, that's the break-even point. If you bet 5 cents and he's going to call with any goddamn pocket pair or queen then, it's probably profitable because the bet itself is break-even, but you have equity to go to showdown. So the only way he can prevent you from making money is to start raise you with the bluffs, or call you with some random ace high hand, which is not the case. So definitely bet at least half a pot here. Well, he does it and you fold. He stole your move. Free flop and actually flopping something. And here's the 1000 BB guy. If you were only versus him on the hand, I would call, because he's doing this with middle pairs and with 9 high flush draws and who knows what. You have position. But you have 3 players behind, which is a problem. Don't call. And hand goes to river, and then someone decides to pick it up. 3-handed, we can 3-bet, coordinated. You have a pair in your hand, but it's double suited, connected, coordinated. Definitely call. Mr. Flop. Oh, he's all in. Oh, I was just about to say how to play the flop, but it's all in, and he had nice equity pre-flop anyway. So don't worry about that. Queens. BPIB 64 decides to call, and you flop double cut shot with the backdoor flush draw. I would check. You don't get a lot of folds on this flop. It's not high low low. It's not even high high low. It's very connected. It's really hard for him to miss this board without any made hand value or any draws. So I would check. He will often check behind, and then you can see the turn and go from there. But I was just thinking about the things I've said to my students when we start to build up some really basic and rough flop strategy. The thing is that in heads up board, if you are not sure what to do or how to play after check, then you should bet. And I would say it's true here. If you don't know how to play after check, then it's better to bet. Because all the reasons for checking applies for betting. You have a good playability for the turn. You have 8 outs to straight. You are blocking the if ace comes. You are blocking the queen jack. You could just bet really big. So if you're not sure or comfortable checking and playing out of position with passive line, then betting is definitely going to be plus EV. You just don't get a lot of folds. And now when the 7 comes on turn, now I think you should bet. You don't need to protect your hand much. And if he has a king, he's not folding it. So you don't make better hands to fold. And there's not many worse hands that could call you. So now you need to check. Because you're blocking the straight draws a lot. Which means you're blocking the queen check and you're blocking the 8-9. The chance for him to have a king is higher than having a straight draws. If you wouldn't be blocking here any of the straight draws, then betting turn when the board pairs is definitely plus EV. You have a huge fold equity here. But when you're actually blocking the hands he would fold, and you have really strong flush draw, and you have the 8 out straights, I would check the turn. But betting is fine. If he raises, you fold. If he calls, you still have equity. And then the active guy 3-bets you. Hasn't 3-bet much. 1 out of 25. 21. So have to give credit for strong hand, but your hand is way. I was just about to say way too strong to fold. Wow. I'm trying to figure out why the hero folded this hand, because this is perfect ace cracking hand. Yeah, it's just no reason to fold in position, even out of position. These are the hands that we love to have in 3-bet boards. Really good playability and really good visibility. So that was a mistake. Of course, when it's hand history, it could be a timeout, it could be a misclick, we don't know. But if it was intentional fold, then it was a mistake. Okay. Free flop with the trips. I would definitely start betting. You, uh, as long as no one raises you, you have the best hand most of the times. And now I would just bet the turn. But don't use half. If you had a full house, you could bet smaller to keep his flush draws, straight draws in the hand. But you don't have the full house yet. So don't give free shot for his draws. Bet bigger. I would bet for bigger sizing. And if he doesn't have a full house, then you have the best hand because you have the ace 8. So definitely bet big for value. As we have seen, people are quite passive and call happy, so I wouldn't just bought it, but bet like 50 cents, 45 at least. And there you go. And then you fold. And we never know whether he had a straight or full house, but whichever it is, it's beating you. Yeah, the PLO4 is coming. Don't worry. Now I totally missed what. Oh, we have a free flop. Yeah, just give up. Oh, it's missed 1,000 BBs. Well, you have players behind you, which kind of sucks. Yes, definitely raise pre-flop versus VP, 1000 BB. Missed the flop, give up, but let's see. He had set of nines, and he had 9 with the cut shot. Well, why would he fold it? Oh, I would mark him so green, or the deepest green I have on my computer. Put any suit in your hand, and it's definitely a pot. But with the rainbow, it's quite thin. You could raise. Definitely, we have this player, so you could raise and just play with the pocket kings. So I wouldn't mind a raise here, but seeing the flop for free is fine. Definitely not minus EV to just check there. So we shouldn't have fold equity versus this player, and then we do. Wow, this is awesome for you. You isolate the best customer on the planet Earth. And bet half a pot. Oh, you go slightly bigger. Well, versus him, I think it's fine. And then bet the turn for while we know his range is way wider than pocket five. I mean a 5+. So definitely value bet the turn. And you can go bigger. The chance for him having the best hand is very low. He's not folding any draw. Extract value. And he folds, which is nice. You win 20 PP pot. And then we have really aggressive. Oh, he's picking up aggression. Wow. He was a bit passive earlier. Now, if this 5 is connected like it would be 10 of diamonds, you could 3-bet to isolate him. And with this hand, it's fine to call. Get a multi-way pot in position. Just fold. You have so few runouts that you're happy to see. Weak flush draw. Wow, you're making hero folds versus this guy who mean bets. Uh, you have the flush draw, which might be actually live very often, and you get the direct odds to draw for it. You have a backdoor straight draws, quite few of them. You have ace high. If ace comes, it's good for you. I wouldn't fold to this guy's min bets. Like, oh boy, this would be nice turn. And you would have won the pot. But you had a lot of equity versus him. Yep, set. And I would lead, as we have seen, people are more passive than aggressive. If you check, often flop goes check, check through. You have the set with open ender. This is a stack of time. Just lead. Limp pot lead for a pot. I like it a lot. And then you have the second nuts. Opponent is not aggressive. And don't start to induce anything. Just bet for value. Bet for value. Dude, he's not bluffing you. And you have the second nuts. So what do we do now? Of course, we're calling. And then play the river, but I would bet the turn because he has some 10-9s in his range. That would call you 2 pairs. And now the river is nasty situation because he could have 10-9-7, which means that you're splitting the pot. So that makes it nasty. He has a straight for sure, and most likely it's not 5-7, so it's queen 9 or it's queen high or jack high. And there's no reason for him to believe that his check high straight wasn't good here when you just check call the turn. So essentially you're paying 1 to win 70 cents because you're splitting the main pot. I would make a tight fold. In the best case scenario, you're risking $1 to win 70 cents, which is bad. And the worst case scenario, you're losing. So it's a really, really tight fold. But I would make it. Hard to see him ever having a worse hand here. It's a nasty turn. But I think 10 is better than queen, because 10-9 is more probable than queen 9 on this flop. But here he could have queen then 9 for sure. But one of the things as a strategy wise is also when you check the turn, in theory he could bluff you, but I don't think 67 deuce is going to turn any hand into a bluff here, like 5-7-4 type of hand. So I think it's played fine. Tight fold on the river, but when passive player decides to barrel with big sizing, that's very often the nuts. So there's the session, and remove Ardi, terve. There were a few mistakes, but not anything big. But when you play in that player pool, where a lot of players are passive, then you can't play the normal 6 max modern PLO that you would play, let's say, on Run It Once, PLO50 or PLO20, where the level of opponents is a bit higher. Because when the level of opponents go down, they are very one-dimensional. So then you have to play one-dimensional too. It's just the best counter strategy for them. Like if all the opponents are passive coin stations, then our strategy is very limited to only value betting. And that's how you make money. We are not bluffing that often. We are not bluff catching. We are not inducing, and so on and so on. We just extract core value hand after hand. And as we saw today, a lot of multi-way pots, people making really loose calls, playing straightforward. The best thing you can do is play strong hands pre-flop, skip marginal hands, and then wait until you hit the hand. When you hit the hand, start betting. Or on those rare occasions when we get heads up pot is 5-5-4, we have nothing, pick up the pot. And that's about it. If you start to play too much, or like there was this one hand where you called the opponent lead the flop and you had naked queens, then when opponent donks the pot, it often means he has something, because people don't dunk that often, and it was his first dunk ever on that session. So he has something, so probably you are behind already. And with try overpair, you have a really bad playability. There's 2 outs that you can call if he bets turn. And then the 5 came and he bets, and you ended up folding, which is the second best card on the deck. So just save those 3 BBs. Do not call if you can't continue post-flop, or you are sure that his range is very wide, and if you call, he's going to shut down. And there was no information on that. Then there was one controversial hand. Should we bet the ace jack on jack 10 then on the flop versus 2 opponents, which aroused some discussion, which is great. Showed you some numbers. It's very close. If the numbers were better, it would be easier to bet. But I tried to explain that versus 2 very passive coin stations, I would much rather bet flop and check turn, check river than check flop, check turn, check river. As we don't have to worry about them outplaying us. But as I said, if either one of them is at least even unknown, I would not bet. It's quite thin spot. But For the student whose hand and session is what he said, it's a typical session. And in that session, he won one decent pot. He had a few aces, missed the flop, so probably, or not probably, it was the case on the session that he just didn't hit his hand. He didn't hit a lot of sets. Well, he hit one and then had the second notch on the river and opponent decided to barrel. It's a very unlucky situation, but right fold without reads, if played that way. It's just patience. Wait for the hands to hit. You're going to hit the sets as often as everyone else. You're going to make your high flushes as often as everyone else. But the session was 145 hands or so. And in those hands, VPIP was true, or the hero saw the flop, which, well, we saw flop on every hand. So hero saw the flop in only 30 hands. And in 30 hands, there's a lot of variance. So it's hard to tell what the problem is, but there were few mistakes, and a couple of those were fundamental. So if those mistakes keep repeating, then that might be the cause. But I think that the cause for being break even or marginally losing player on that player pool, I think the reason is something else that we saw on this session. So we have to explore a bit more, because what we saw on this session doesn't explain why there's not profits made, because the opponents, we could say that they are so bad that it would be decently easy to make money there by just being patient and waiting for the good things to happen, waiting for the strong hand. If you start to push, your patience goes away, and you think that, oh, I've been folding flops of flow and I need to play some hands, I need to do something, and you start to slightly overplay your hands versus those kind of players, that's when you start to lose. So patience is a virtue. But nothing on that session explains why the money is not made. But there are some indicators like calling flops when you shouldn't, and then making hero phones versus BPIP 1000 BP, I mean 1000 BP stacked with BPIP 100 player whose ranges are all over the place. Making hero phones on the flop in position, never ever do that. But other than that, most hands were played well, so it's really good starting point, or at least a point where we can go forward. And Remove Art is asking betting tips for Super Bowl over under. Definitely over. You have two shootout teams. Then most likely it's going to be. I think the over is around 53 or something, which is quite high, but I would go for over all day long. Nothing indicates that it's going to be under, because Kansas City defense cannot stop 49ers, and I don't think 49ers can stop Kansas City. Or if they do, they're going to win. I would say that so far, when I have talked with people and what my own thoughts are, it's pretty much 50-50 who wins the Super Bowl. Kansas City has better offense, but there's so many things that is favorable for 49ers. And at least last time I checked, Kansas City was the favorite. So I think the odds for 49ers are too high. So I would much rather bet 49ers. If you get, I don't know what the odds are, but if it's like 2.2, it's going to be too high, in my opinion. Because the thing is that, yeah, Kansas City has fine offense, but so far Kansas City has been very nervous. In all of the playoff games, the first quarter, they have made a lot of mistakes. So probably in Super Bowl, they are going to make mistakes. And 49ers defense is built to stop Kansas City. Now, this goes to football, dog. So if you don't understand football, thank you. Have a great day. But for those who are interested, the thing is that Kansas City is almost impossible to defend because if you put more pressure than the initial 4 defensive linemen, so you start to blitz, it means that you have less defenders to defend versus the receivers. And Patrick Mahomes can scramble and buy time, and he will find the free receivers. What 49ers can do is they don't need to blitz. The 49ers have blitzed the least in NFL because they don't need to. They have such a great front four in their defense, the tackles and ends, that they can get pressure with just 4 players rushing. So they can drop the remaining 7 to coverage. And as Patrick Mahomes is not that good of a runner, they don't have to spy him, at least in the beginning. So they can drop 7 in the coverage to cover. They have 7 defensive backs to cover 5 or 4 receivers. So that's a matchup that benefits 49ers, and they can get to Mahomes with just rushing by 4 or with 4. So the 49ers defense is probably the best defense that can stop Kansas City. And then 49ers offense, for the past 2 games, they have just run the ball because they don't need to throw. Like in the conference championship, Jimmy Garoppolo threw 8 times, and was it 6 of those throws was in the first quarter. So in the last 3 quarters, he threw 2 times only because he didn't need to. They ran the ball, Packers couldn't stop it. So Kansas City doesn't have videotape from 49ers passing game. And Shanahan definitely has plays that he hasn't used on the regular season. So they have outstanding running game. I mean, when you look at the running plays, they are so clever. They are so modern and good and fresh. But they definitely have passing games that is a continuation of those running plays. They use the same formations, same movement shifts, same play action, and then pass the ball. And Kansas City can't prepare for those because they haven't seen the video. So there's a lot of things that say that 49ers could even be the favorite in my books. So 2.13 for 49ers. Okay, it has come down. Well, you also have to check what's the status of Kansas City's defensive tackle. Just can't remember his name now, but he had some calf leg problems. So if he can't play, 49er becomes a huge favorite. So I would go for over and 49ers for starters. And probably what's the over-under for Jimmy Garoppolo passing? Because if the sides only look the past 2 games where Garoppolo has threw less than 100 yards, then I'm very sure that on the Super Bowl he's going to throw a lot. Because if they run over Kansas City on Super Bowl, that would be the headline of century. So Garoppolo is going to pass. So let me check if I can find quickly American football, Super Bowl. Are there any players player passing? Oh fuck. Oh, Jimmy Garoppolo's passing over under is 240. Damn. What kind of Jimmy Garoppolo passing touchdowns over under is 1.5. So you get almost odds of 2 for him to throw at least 2 touchdown passes. Not sure, but for Patrick Mahomes, for him to throw over 2 touchdown passes, it's 1.43 on Unibet. I would probably put big amount of money to that. If Kansas City is going to stay in the game, they're going to make touchdowns, and their running game is not that good. Patrick Mahomes is going to pass over 2 touchdown passes, 99% certainty, I think. And for over 1.5 touchdowns for Patrick Mahomes by passing, you get almost 1.5 odds. Wow. Go for that one. Definitely. And for Jimmy Garoppolo to throw interception, you get 1.7. Oh, that's guaranteed. Garoppolo is going to throw. He's going to throw an interception for sure. Oh boy, definitely. All right, but we'll talk about Super Bowl later. Or we are not going to talk about later in the week because I don't really have time. Because I probably can't stream a lot. I will stream to probably tomorrow and then on Monday, but then from Tuesday on, the rest of the week is just I'm working, then some sports action, and then Super Bowl cruise on Sunday. But I will see you guys on tomorrow and Monday with live action. I hope you enjoyed session review. A lot of discussion about solvers, strategies, exploiting, being balanced, and everything. But have a fine Saturday, and I hope to see you on tomorrow evening. Thanks and bye bye.